Call everybody to order. We are here for the Planning Commission meeting for June 8th, 2022. It is 6:01 p.m. and we will get started. Commissioner Fife has volunteered to help us with the Pledge of Allegiance. So if everyone would rise.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And we will have the commissioners identify themselves and state whether or not they have any conflicts of interest. Beginning with Commissioner Miller.
Yeah, Commissioner Miller, no conflicts.
Peter Fife, no conflicts. Ryan Henry, no conflicts.
Daniel Gonzalez, no conflicts.
Dave Anderson, no conflicts.
Laurie Urquiaga, no conflicts.
Lisa Jensen, no conflicts.
Robert Knudsen, no conflicts.
Melissa Kendall, no conflicts.
Thank you. We have 3 items on the agenda. Item number 1 and item number 3 are legislative. That means we will be making a recommendation to the municipal council for them to act upon. Item number 2 is administrative, and that means that our decision tonight is the decision. And we will begin with item number 1. Jose R Mijares requests approval of an ordinance text amendment to section 14.21D.020 Provo City Code to add new and used car sales, service stations, and automobile repairs as permitted uses in the Western Gateway WG zone with citywide application, and Sion Manoa has the staff report.
All right, thank you so much. Hello, everyone. My name is Sione Manoa. I'm sure many of you have read the staff report today and understand today's request. I will turn it to. Okay. So the applicant, Mr. Mijares, is requesting an ordinance text amendment change to add 4 new uses to the WG West Gateway Zone. The applicant has a pending business license that currently cannot be approved by the planning due to the type of use not allowed in the WG zone. The WG zone, in correspondence to the general plan, identifies this area as regional commercial uses and mixed uses. This area being stated in the current general plan as the front door to the downtown Provo. Downtown Provo should be of high development standards and uses. That being said, adding new and used car sales, service stations, and automobile repair in the West Gateway Zone citywide would hinder the general plan. Staff recommend denial to the plan. The staff recommend denial to this for the proposed ordinance text amendment change to section 1421D.020 permitted uses in the West Gateway Zone.
Do any commissioners have questions for staff at this point? Knudsen.
I grew up in that area of Provo, in the Franklin area. Could walk across Center Street to get bread for my mother at the market, or Halliday's Market, without worrying about getting run over. Those days are long gone, but that area really hasn't changed too much. The question I had that I wondered is, there used to be a Reams store there where all of the neighbors would shop. And when it was torn down or went out of business, whatever the case was, the Maverick was put in there. Why? It seems like that would fit what we're trying to do now, but why was it allowed to be put in there at that time? There's already 3 service stations within 3 blocks. Just a question, I just wondered.
Yeah, I can't speak to the history at all, but we do have basically the new downtown gateway zone that has just barely been applied to this area. That's correct? Okay,
Can we confirm that? Not to question you, Lori, but
yeah.
were the zoning standards different when Maverick was built than they are today, or is it not considered a service station? I wondered about that, if maybe it's defined differently as a use. That was one of the questions I had as well.
So originally, the zoning did not allow for uses like Maverick. Maverick came in, the council thought it would be appropriate to allow that to go there, which created the need for another gateway zone. We had 2 gateway zones.
The one to the east, is that the different gateway zone?
We haven't actually built the zoning.
That's me. Sorry, but that's the other question that I had. The GW on the map. The difference, what or similarities maybe?
There's, this particular use or these uses are probably the biggest difference. The original intent when the West Gateway Zone was written was to upgrade the type of uses going in because this is such an important entrance to the city. Maverick is a convenience store. It's not looked at it. It's not classified
As a service station. Okay.
Convenience.
Commissioner Anderson?
So I should have maybe spit this out quicker. So in terms of differences between the WG and the GW, I get West Gateway. What's GW? Just but we had
WD.
Gateway.
makes sense. Is that one of the key differences? Convenience stores? Is that how that came about? Okay. So then my last question, I think, further to the east from what we're looking at now, it looks like a number of homes over a long period of time have been converted into businesses of different types. There's almost like a thrift store, a couple of blocks to the east. Looks like there's a recreational vehicle rental kind of a thing on the south side of the road there. How does that transition happen going from a residential use to a non-residential use? Is there like a site plan approval that takes place, or, and I guess to speak to the concern, it's improvements that don't seem to happen, like maybe off-street parking or landscape improvements and that kind of thing.
Typically, when we become aware of that, when we catch it, is when they come and apply for business license to change that land. We've got to approve the business license if they can't meet the requirement for that land use. So whatever commercial use they're asking for, every commercial use in the city has a parking ratio you have to meet. And that's one of the things we check for when that business license comes in.
Are there some maybe rogue things happening there then that just haven't been approved? Is that
It could be, I'm not familiar with the exact ones you're talking about, but that could be.
okay?
I'll have to go look, Dave, I'm not sure.
Okay.
You should probably stay close, Mr. Pepperoni. Because this municipal council did approve the new gateway code or not yet? I'm seeing a nod in the back.
Yes, this all happened probably 6 years ago when Dave Harding was the neighborhood chair of Dixon. And he was very instrumental working directly with me in writing that West Gateway zone. Subsequent to that, he got elected to the city council. But it was the whole Maverick discussion that spurred another zone and all the restrictions that should be in that zone.
Okay, so the guidelines that we just talked about last month are basically the design guidelines. Is that all it was?
Right. Those are design standards that talk about architecture and window placement and all those types of things. The
Okay.
design standards for these zones. That's correct.
And they were basically the same for both of them?
Yes.
My recollection. Okay.
That change you made and the council approved makes that more uniform among these zones. Yes.
Okay. All right, other commissioner questions for staff? Yes, Mr. Buckmore.
So in the current zone code, what happens to the service stations that are there? Are they allowed to do any improvements, or because currently no new ones are allowed per se, but what happens to the ones that are currently there with this
So they
zoning?
become legally non-conforming, but then they become, so they can continue business as long as they want. They can change hands, be bought and sold and continue in operation. But there are a lot of rules on to what extent can you expand a non-conforming use. That's discouraged. The idea behind non-conforming uses is that they'll go away and be replaced by conforming uses. The dilemma we find every city finds yourself in is that as that non-conforming use wants to reinvest and wants to make the building nicer, it's really a hard position to be in to say, gosh, we really appreciate you wanting to invest in your business and improve it, but we can't allow you because you're a non-conforming business. So there's this real balancing act that you go through in that scenario.
Sure.
Okay, any other questions? I have a question. Oh, yes, Commissioner Jensen.
Commissioner Knutson and I were just wondering if you could maybe give us a rundown of the uses that are allowed so we can get a vision of the what's included in what's allowed, so we know whether this request is anywhere near that. Another second part of that question would be on page 4 of the staff report, you say that staff has found there are other land use zones that are more suitable for the WG zone. Maybe you meant to say more suitable for this request, but what were those recommendations? Like if you were to say this isn't the right place, where would it be? Or this isn't the right use, what would it be instead? It's in your conclusion paragraph of page 4. This is a really tricky thing because when there's so many non-conforming uses that seem like these should align with that, it's hard to know which direction to go.
Yes, barely. If you could make it a little bit bigger would be nice. Control plus. Oh, yeah. That's better. So we want to see the conditionals.
Uses around the permitted uses. There you go.
Yeah, they stop. Can you keep scrolling?
Keep scrolling down. Wait, you went too fast.
This is the good stuff. What does motor scooters or motorcycles? Is that sales?
Yes, after sales or repair.
Okay.
You can drive them on the road there. It says bike rentals only. Waivers, they must be conditional.
Conditional uses.
Yes.
Too far.
So it looks like gasoline service stations are already there.
As a conditional use. Is there anything below that?
Okay. Commissioner Jensen, do you have more that you want to say with that?
No, I just want to see it.
Okay, any other questions for staff?
Oh, look, it says that right there.
Okay.
So in more layman's terms, just looking through this list, I kind of have an idea of what type of neighborhood, if I were describing this to a layman that didn't understand city code speak, what would you say was kind of the intent of that neighborhood?
So the intent for the neighborhood was a regional commercial use was supposed to be for that zone. And so being that it was in the heart, it's the front entrance door to Provo City. That was their goal, is the mixed uses was another one that they were hoping for that zone to be into.
Okay.
Those are the two ones, as regional commercial through the general plan, and then the mixed uses.
Okay. Because I'm seeing a lot of almost industrial uses on this list. And so that's why I was curious, is that the intent, that it's kind of an industrial commercial area? Okay, that's all I have.
Okay. We would like to invite the applicant to come forward and present any information would you state your name and city of residence?
Okay, my name is Rudy Soldana. I'm speaking on behalf of Jose Mijares. My personal residential address is 1167 South, 1410 East in Provo, 84606. Well, my understanding is like I could have some kind of visual support. Well, it's important to understand, well, if you just see the amendment just as a used car dealership or car maintenance, you don't see the big picture of what we are trying to do. So what we're trying to do is a service station. And so we would do some basic and minor maintenance to cars, but we will, the visual support will be so much better. Let me see. So.
What do you need to see?
Oh, I have a presentation.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
that
an
you've
actual
already given to
presentation.
them, or?
Yeah, okay. I need to try to explain what is the idea. So we're proposing a business, okay? It's a service station. It will contain, on the right side of the property will be a restaurant, which is a permitted use under the zoning. And on the left side, the building is already designed to do car repairs and automotive related business. So we want to combine those two ideas into one. I don't know if you guys have ever go to Nevada and you see this service station where you can do some basic maintenance to your car while you can wait and actually a place you can hang out. So that's our concept. Like you will have a restaurant, you will take your car for basic maintenance. Again, we won't do anything major like engine swap, anything like that, just like oil change, brakes. So while you have your car being serviced, you can hang out in this restaurant / commercial. And so it's a whole idea. And the obstacles that we have is the part related to the car in that idea is not permitted. So I'm representing a family that lives here in Provo, the family Avila, and they're residents that are willing to invest and recondition this building because it has been abandoned for years. So in order to do that investment, we really need to get this part of the car-related part of the business approved so we can do our whole concept. Again, if I have a whole project in some slides, but okay. Well, something I would like to mention is like we've been working with the neighbors in the Dixon neighborhood. We actually contact the neighbors and the president who is here present, and we agreed that nothing has been done in that specific property for years and years and years. So part of the presentation was you can probably the place, you always drive, and it has been abandoned. So it's a property that has been abandoned and neglected for X amount of years, and you have a private business owner willing to do so. Oh, there we go. Thank you. Okay, so this is a concept. Again, it's just a basic concept. We're willing to work it out and make it any change necessary to make it work. So, well, here's the location. Okay, it's 910 West Central Street, Provo, Utah. Let me see. Let me follow up with my gas station final. Okay, can I go to the next slide, please? Okay, so again, it's really important to emphasize the abandonment of the property. The current is a really sad and neglected property that doesn't represent the vision of the city of Provo as a place that welcome visitors. Like I have exchanged some work with the president of that neighborhood. He expressed it's really depressing. You're coming to Provo and you see that spot. Everything else is great. It looks great, but just that spot is like we wish it would be something better. So can I go to the next slide, please? The exterior of the building is noticeable outdated, like it's old-fashioned. Okay. And it's not really appealing for the surrounding areas. You have the Maverick in front, which is a really modern building. And the neighbors, the residents around are trying to keep their houses in good standing. So this is such a contrast. And so it's kind of monotonous, the building and all that. Can we go to the next slide? And also the principal elevation, which is a concept for engineers and architects, is like the whole design of that property doesn't have a purpose. So if you go there, you're going to see car parks over there, storage. It doesn't have a purpose. It's just all over the place. So it gives a really poor first impression for those entering the city of Provo. We can agree on that, I hope. So if we can go to the next slide. Something that we got some backlash, I would say, from zoning is that they told me, and I quote, "We don't want a car lot as the first thing that visitors see when they come to the city of Provo." And so I put this slide so you can understand the surrounding areas. Literally in front of that property, there is a mechanic shop. There is 2 gas stations, and down 1 block down, there is another mechanic shop. So that argument is something that we talked to the neighbors of Dixon neighborhood as well. It's like we refute that by saying, well, I mean, there is this kind of business around. So we can move to the next slide. So this is the general view of the project. Our business potential name, we would like to call it Mexus. I'm Hispanic, you can tell, okay? You can tell by my accent, by my look. And well, Hispanic community is an important part of our community, and we would like to emphasize our culture and also the American culture. So if you can see, the name is like the color of the Mexican flag, and then US is the color of the American flag. So we just want to do something, the concept, you know, like we will embrace, we were going to put a Mexican restaurant on that corner. So that was the idea behind the name. So we can go to the next slide. Okay, so something important to mention. Okay, so on the right side of the property is going to be the restaurant. You're going to be some picture from the inside, how it would look potentially. And the left side is already set up as a car mechanic shop. Like we don't have to do anything. That's why we would like to do it here, because it's already set up. So our proposal, again, we will do a Mexican restaurant, which be roughly 70-80% of our revenue. And then we want to do some basic service like oil changes, brakes, and all that. And then if you see that, this says gas station stage 2. And it's something that we discussed with the neighbors as well. This is a potential. There are already 2 gas stations there. So we want to start with the restaurant, the basic maintenance, and we'll see how everything develop, and we will move to the stage 2, which will be the gas station. That makes sense? Because there is some concerns, some valid concern, for example, the traffic. So of course we want to do all these many business, and we have so much traffic there. So we will be reasonable. We will see how the business develop, and we will take the necessary action. We might do the gas station or not, but the rest, the first stage would be remodel the property, do some commercial offices inside the restaurant, and they're relating to the car sale. The reason we want to do the car sales is because we have a wholesale contract. So we don't really need to do much retail. Retail meaning we need to park the cars and we need to show the cars to prospect in order to sell it. No, we will do wholesale. Basically, we get the car, we fix it, and we get rid of them. So it's not going. When I drive around Provo and I see all these dealership, I understand why some people will have some concerns. But what I'm trying to explain to you is that's not our business. That's part of the business. And one of the reasons we want the dealership license is because the dealership license gives you the scope of work that we need to do all these things. Something important to mention about the uses, for some reason, Provo really break down every single use. For example, you can have a used car business, but you cannot do maintenance. Or you can sell motorcycles, but you cannot sell cars. So everything is really break down, and the scope of work of a dealership license give you that broad scope of work to do the thing that we want to do. I don't know if you have any questions so far. I'm trying to explain myself as best as I can.
You can finish, and then
Okay.
they do have some.
Sure, we're almost finished here. We can move to the next slide, please. Well, again, the concept Mexus, US, automotive center, restaurant. Again, the restaurant is the main business there. Okay, so next slide, please. Yeah, we can
Next
do
slide.
the next, please. Okay. Something that we understand as a Provo resident, again, is this is one of the first properties that you see when you are entering Provo. So we would like to make a point of reference of the city. We don't want to be just one more business. We want to become a point of reference of the city. For example, hey, let's meet there. Let's meet at Mexus. So we're proposing to put some kind of iconography, something that represent, in this case, Utah. We got some feedback from the Dixon neighborhood that it might be better to do something Provo related, and we're open to that. But what I'm trying to tell you is that we want to do something remarkable. So when the visitor of Provo enter the city, they can see this, and it's a welcoming to the city. That makes sense? Okay, thank you. So in this case, again, this is a delicate art in Moab, but we're willing to modify to we got the feedback from the Dixon neighborhood. So, and I really feel that we need to work closely with them because they will be literally our neighbors. So we'll take a recommendation from them. So this is, again, we want to do something remarkable that represent either Utah or Provo City. Okay. Okay. And just a point of reference, I don't know if you guys have driven through the freeway in Orem and you see this arc in Toyota dealership. That's the concept. That's the idea. Okay. Okay. So we can do the next slide. Part of the construction and remodeling, we will use wooden siding that gives an organic look and blend with the nature. You know, we don't want to do something that breaks that vision, you know. And then probably we're going to use green. Green is usually the color that Provo City use, but also is really amicable because it's not a big contrast. We want to blend in. We don't want to, you know, like, how do I explain this? We want to blend with the rate of the neighbor, so no do any kind of disturbance to anyone. Okay. So next slide, please. And then, yeah, we'll do some emphasis on some of the vegetation that's over there. There is no match, but the one that is there, we will take care of it and enhance it because, well, Utah is a desert, but we need to take care of the little green that we have. So next slide. Okay, this is some of the interior designs. So basically, it won't be a full service restaurant. It would be like the typical breakfast table, you know, that you've seen in some movies, you know, like you get your breakfast, you go. Our emphasis in the drive-through, which we already contact zoning, and the drive-through would be okay. So again, it's a place where you can hang out while you are doing some basic maintenance in your car. So yeah, that's the idea. And on the left side, you can see we will put 2 commercial offices. So we can do some paperwork. Okay, we can go to the next slide, please. And then some other exterior representations. And one more, please. Okay, well, we can skip that maybe. I just give some example because some of the referrals that we got is like nobody wants a dealership in the entrance of the city. And we have Toyota in the entrance of Orem. We can go to the next one. We have BMW in Pleasant Grove. Can we do the next one? We have Doug Smith in American Fork. All of these are entrance of the city. Can we go to the next one? We have Audi in Lehigh. The next one. Doug Smith again in Spanish Fork. And again, we are a medium business, small medium business. We are not a big corporation, but we truly believe that a small effort by private entities can thrive the economy of a city, you know? So we really hope and expect that we don't need to be a big corporation in order to get something approved, you know? The family I represent has been living here for years and years. They are citizens of this country, resident of Provo, and they believe in that American dream. They have had a business here in Provo for a while, and they're willing to take the risk and do the investment. And I think the Provo City can benefit from the project for the reason that I already explained. And we can benefit as owners, of course. So part of the purpose of Provo, when you read the whole vision 2030, I believe, 2040, it says that we recognize this mutual benefit between private entities and the city. And also it remarks the fact that we really need to use the asset of the city in order to enhance the city. This building is an asset for the city of Provo. It's already built. It's an asset, a potential asset that we're willing to renew and make it an attractive business for residents, locals, and visitors. Okay, so this is pretty much the presentation. So in summary, the reason we are requesting these amendments is because part of our business proposal conflict with some of the permitted uses. Again, as a summary, we're allowed to do the restaurant, we're allowed to do the drive-through restaurant, even we are allowed to do a gas station as a conditional use. The part to the car related part of the business is not allowed. And we need it, honestly, to make this happen.
Okay, commissioners, you have questions?
Yes, sir.
Yes, several questions. On the same block that you're talking about, at about 980 West, there's an empty gas station. They couldn't make it. It's been that way for several years. The one that's kitty corner across the street from you went out. It used to have the bus stop there. It has now started again. Maverick's across the street. How do you think that you can compete with Maverick? Second question, what are you planning on selling cars there? I'm just wondering why you want to add motor vehicle new and used sales. Oh. Oh, okay. Okay, so just the first question.
Those two questions. So first, like I explained, the gas station is stage 2 of the project. Our stage 1 is the restaurant and the basic maintenance service. And we'll see how the business develop, and we will take the decision to do a gas station or not. I'm fully aware there is gas station in front, which is Maverick, which is huge. And also there is Chevron in the corner. So it's something that also expressed to Dixon neighborhood. That is a decision that we will take after we see how the business develop. Answering your second question regarding to the sales of cars. Well, in order to make do a business, the business needs to make sense, right? Economically. We have the opportunity, we have a contract of a wholesale contract. What it means by wholesale. So you have wholesale and retail, right? Wholesale is when you, for example, we get a car, we enhance it, and we sell it to another dealership so they can sell it and make a profit of it. We make a profit as well, but it's cash flow. So this, and then retail is when you buy a car, prepare it, and then you park it there and you cross your fingers somebody's going to buy it. But so yeah, our concept, we will do some retail, but our emphasis is wholesale. So just to explain you, this business makes sense for us because we have already the wholesale contract, so we can cover our overhead with that. I don't know if that answers your question. It just makes sense as a business. That's why we need that.
I have a question. I like your Mexus, by the way, the name. I like it.
Thank
a
you.
lot. Do you feel like you can't be successful doing just a restaurant in that location?
Yes. So like I said, 80% of our revenue, I truly believe is going to be from the restaurant side of things. Just a concept. The type of Mexican restaurant we want to do is like something similar to Cafe Rio or Costa Vida. So it's fast, quality food. You order, you get it, you get out. This is not a full service restaurant. Yeah, we believe that actually our plan B was to, because this is about commitment, like any relationship. Our plan B was like, take the property, do the restaurant, show the city of Provo that we're committed to do something, and then hey, we enhance this place. Can you help us with the other part of the business? But we really need again, this property is an asset for the city of Provo. It's already set up that way. It has a base for car maintenance. Why would be so much money to recondition and repurpose that property? We want to enhance the asset that is already there. That answer your question? Thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Jensen has a question, and then a couple of others.
Okay, the pictures in the presentation make it look like there's lots of room between the street and the structure, but that is not the case when you drive by. So I'm wondering, are you rebuilding the structure or are you just redoing it so that, because you mentioned that you were going to use the auto repair bays that are already there. Are you planning on building it and setting it back further from the street than it already is?
We
or-
are planning on enhance the current building.
Okay,
Yes, and we are going to maximize the space as much as we can. That's why I mentioned that the gas station is we'll see, because we need to make sense. If there is much traffic, we will get rid of it, you know?
the reason I ask is more for if you're going to have these uses, you need to have enough space for parking and other for the customers. And I know there's some in the back, right?
A lot.
Okay.
I mean, decent enough.
Right. And so that is one, anyone who's going to the auto repair aspect of it would be parking in the front. And so that's where I wanted to make sure there was enough room for that access.
We will we will conduct our business in a efficient manner, and
Okay.
again, we are open to conditionals. So
And I have to clarify too, that we're just talking about this to see if a use like this would be compatible, because it's very easy for me to be like, oh, this looks so great. Yes, we should, but that's not where we're at in the planning process. We're here to say, is this a use that we can foresee being good in the zone?
I understand, and I understand that, and that's the reason I did this presentation, because if I'm here like, please let us sell cars, and you don't have the rest of the picture,
Thank you.
you cannot do an informed decision, in my opinion.
Right.
So I need you to understand this is a whole concept. It's not just a sales car business or a car maintenance business. It's a whole concept. We call it service station. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, I just want to clarify. Are your plans to demolish the building or to recondition it?
We're going
Remodel it.
We were going to remodel it. So, well, you're not being in the inside. The inside is completely torn apart. We're going to fully remodel the inside.
To follow up with that, I'm curious about the concept. It's a place I'd probably go to. But just looking at the building as it is, I'm looking at an aerial photo of the property, and with the aerial photo based on the cars there and their proximity to the building, that I don't see that happening on the property, because the space is just it's not to scale. It doesn't fit. And then the second, well, I'll just leave my comment at that.
Can I do a comment about
there's
that? Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I'll just leave it at that.
Well, this picture right there is is a scale 1:1, 1:1. And then, well, here you cannot see, but there is back areas, which is considerable.
Well, that's what I mean. If the back area, if you're demolishing the building and putting it further north, putting it back, I can see that space happening. But if you're using the building as is,
Can we go back
I
a
don't see
couple
that kind of
slides?
space.
There is a really good picture where it shows the back of the building. So farther. Farther, no, it's pretty much more. Right there. There is parking in the back. And there is like, we counted like 15 parkings at least in the back, and that's part of the property. And then behind the base, actually the doors, those bay has 2 doors, one in front and one in the back. And again, we want to do an attractive business, so we're going to do everything from the back. We're not going to have that crazy traffic, sorry, in front of the business.
Okay.
Sir. That, I don't know if that answered your question.
Yeah, I mean, I was just oriented.
So
Sorry,
Oh.
one more thing. Yeah, again, I personally, I think it's like the back is like a 50% more of the property, if that makes sense. I have seen, because there was a previous business, I have seen 40 cars in that back. Well, we don't want to do that. We don't want to stock cars, but I'm just giving you the numbers. I have in my mind.
So about that parking, so as I look at this picture, I see the 8 or 9 spaces, right behind the building. So
Yes.
there, yep. And then you have that wall to the east of it. And then as I Google map that, there's a really large space which looks to be a parking lot. Is that part of this property as well then?
Well, that fence, there is no actually a fence right there. That is one of the suggestions we got from our directly neighbor in that property. Her name is Maria, Miss Maria. Yeah, so she was like, hey, please do something to separate. How do I explain?
So I guess my question is, with the bays that are pre-existing,
Yes.
you have a front bay, and then you're saying in the back there's a door,
There is 2 doors, one
Yeah,
in front,
front and
one
the
in the
back.
back.
and then the one in the back, does that lead to a parking space
Yes.
for you to
so
house your cars away from
we
the view of
Yeah,
public
exactly.
and everything else like that?
Yes.
Okay. So there's, if what I'm seeing on Google Maps is true, there is a substantial amount of parking back there.
And again, I would like to say that this is a concept. We're willing to work it out to the necessity of the city to get it approved.
Thank you. Brian and Miles.
First of all, I just want to say I admire your vision here, that you're bringing together things people don't typically think go together. Getting an oil change and going to a restaurant. That's so I admire your entrepreneurial spirit about this. I too have questions about parking. Obviously, in a concept, we're not quite there. One question I had: the fuel system in this, is it functional? Are the tanks still good? What would it take to get the fuel part up and going again?
My understanding is like it's fully functional, but you need to do regular maintenance
Right.
every 6 or 2 times a year. I'm not 100%
Okay.
about the data, but again, the full station will be developed, seeing how the actual business develop. That makes sense. So
Yeah. So operation, to get it
Concept,
operational
yeah,
wouldn't
it
take
could
much.
potentially be operational. It's set up that way as well.
Okay.
We just need to do the maintenance. And number wise, is a lot of money.
That's my
A substantial amount of money. And again, I'm being honest with you. There is a lot of competition. So we need to make a business that makes sense. It's a stage 2, because if it makes sense, we will do it.
Yeah. And I just asked, there's a service station near my parents that sold claiming operational and it wasn't. So I would hate for you to have something like that.
So a gas station operating there a couple of years ago. I've been resident of the city for 5 years plus. So
Okay.
yeah. It was a Philips 66 back in the day. So
Yeah.
I know it's operational potentially.
So I guess just a last comment. There's always that question of, in my mind, it's a great project. Is it in the right place?
Is the perfect place.
Well, as well as if we change this zone, it opens it up for everything within the zone. And we have to take that into consideration as well, that we may not get a project as innovative and visionary as this. So we have to weigh that in this decision as well, is if we allow this, it has to be allowed for everyone.
Impact other. Yeah, I understand that.
As well as the city is trying to make a change to this neighborhood. And so we do have to take that into account as well.
Yeah.
But I do, I don't want you to get discouraged in your vision, because I love the way you guys are thinking about this and really thinking outside the box. I think
the concept is good, just is this the right place? And can we change this zone with all the other factors that are in play? And that's something we're going to have to weigh. So
I think the answer for that is like the leisure process.
Mhm.
Leisure process allow a conditional use.
Mhm.
Write the rules, we follow through.
Okay. Commissioner Miller?
Does the family already own this property and looking to redevelop it, or are they looking to buy it and do this?
We're not the landlord. We have conversation with the landlord. We already have a agreement, a verbal agreement based on whatever happens with this amendment. He's 100% up to it because he's not going to spend the money to remodel. We're going to take that. We're going to do the investment. So he's like, yeah, sure, do. And then, yeah, we want to buy this property eventually. I mean, again, you asked me, is the perfect place? Is the perfect place? I help some restaurant in Utah County, about 20 restaurants. So I do the payment processing. I've seen numbers. I know how it makes sense out of this, and this is great. And so,
Okay, so on these uses, Commissioner Miller, were you done? Okay, sorry. The automotive services is there, so is that permitted now? Is it grandfathered because that's already a use that is on that property? So I don't know if that's for staff as well as.
So in order to be grandfather, it needs to be the same ownership. There was a break in the ownership. It doesn't qualify for grandfather.
But we were just told that if the.
It's not ownership. It's if the business license is lapsed for a year or more, you lose nothing.
Okay, so it's the lapse in the license that's the issue? Okay. That was really what my question was. Any other questions for the applicant? Thank you.
May I add the last thing? This is the last thing, I promise. Part of the application was to make write a statement about why this is good for the city. I mean, that was part of the application.
Are you talking about the questions in the staff report?
One of the requirements to do this amendment was do a document called Purpose of the City of Provo, how this is in connection to the purpose of Provo. So if you can, we can just put there and I want, you should have it. Yeah, it's part of the application. Yes. Oh, I can summarize saying this. Probably you have read the city view. Probably all of you are familiarized with that. City Pro wants to make sure that it's easy with business and private investors from the outside. And again, this is a really good asset for the city and we want to make it right. Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay. That was interesting. Commissioners, yes, we need to open this up to public comment. So is there a neighborhood chair for this area that is here? Okay.
Hello, my name is Benjamin Ellis Dixon, neighborhood chair. And so just making sure I'm following directions. We met with the applicant. I met with him personally before we held a neighborhood meeting. We posted on Facebook also about the project. And I admit I was quite skeptical. I thought the business idea was a little haphazard. When I met with him, And when we had a public comment on Facebook, it was pretty clear that the neighborhood, with a vast majority, came around to the idea. They're pretty tired of that particular building being abandoned and being kind of an eyesore. They're especially excited about a restaurant idea because we have one right now in our neighborhood, and they're extremely excited about the prospect of having a Cafe Rio style restaurant. They're very excited about it. They were concerned about a dealership mostly, but the concerns were alleviated when it was wholesale, when it was presented as wholesale. And the purpose of the dealership was to access rights to services that would be rendered in an auto dealership type manner for his overall concept. And that was really the reason for the dealership, and so that he could actually render his auto services in his full service station concept. And so in about a 3 to 7 margin against and for in the neighborhood really rallied behind and really liked this concept quite a bit. They understand that a gas station is probably never going to be there. They don't really care. There's lots of gas stations around the area, and the solvency of the business was quite clear with the restaurant and the service station services being there. We all like Rudy. We like his presentation. We really like the concept around it. We really like the restaurant. And we really like that this is going to be an amazing facelift for that eyesore of an area. And we are concerned that if this is designed on the majority level, I have to emphasize that it's not unanimous, but on the majority level in the Dixon neighborhood comments, we're excited that this will be at least a facelift, and we're worried that if it's denied, that the abandonment and the conditional uses would be just a barrier for anyone coming in who is going to have this kind of ambition for this applicant. And so I hope you take these comments in consideration. Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right. Do we have anyone else who would like to make a public comment on this issue? Okay, I don't see anyone. We will close the public comment part of this and open it up to discussion among the commissioners.
I'll go first. It's really helpful to hear the neighborhood comments. I'm not particularly keen on auto sales, wholesale or retail, like at a gateway thing. And then, yeah, you point out that this is standard for cities all along Utah County, I-15. And those are the big guys, right? And it's really persuasive to hear the neighborhood in support of that. I live in a neighborhood that has some it's underserved commercially. And so if someone would come in, like it would that provided a service that the community wanted, like, and bend over backwards to make it happen. So to hear that split on the public comment at 30-70 it's very persuasive. Appreciate that. That's all.
Commissioner Jensen.
I have several comments. I'll just go through them. This presentation was for a car lot that's small scale, but changing the zoning, like making that permissible on any level, opens it up for any level. And that is my number one concern, is that is completely against the objective of the zoning and the design standards that are there. However, I like that it would improve the entryway look, and that is their goal. That is very encouraging for me, which leads me to think that maybe the use that's allowed in a zone isn't as important as the design standards that control that. And maybe that would alleviate typical problems that would come for these uses. I like the service it offers. I like the idea that the neighborhood that Commissioner Gonzalez spoke of that doesn't have services like that isn't right off the freeway exit. You have to go a little bit further. And I like the idea that you could be on your way to Idaho and have a flat tire and be able to pull off and get services, or that your check engine light came on and somebody could check that, or, that it would be a place like that. I think once again, if we allow automotive repair, I don't see anything in there that says limited to oil changes, et cetera. Like, I'm afraid if you open it up for oil changes, tire fixes, that it also implies you could get your engine overhauled, and at what point does air conditioning, coolant, recharge, where does that fall in there? Because once you get to the higher end or the bigger, more involved auto repair jobs, then you're talking about vehicles stored on the property for an extended period of time. I love my mechanic that I go to, but their lot is an eyesore. And they have the sales they must have a license because they always have cars with stickers on the window saying how much it is. And it looks like a junk lot. And I think that's what we're all worried about. And I also think that's why the zoning has been written the way it is, because that's what we're trying to avoid is something like that junk lot appearance, that though our intention is good, if we have people coming in for an oil change and a salad, that'll be great. But if they're coming in with a repair that happened while they were on the road and it turns out to be bigger than what they thought of, what do we do with those vehicles that are there? And are the services that the vehicles require going to be allowed there? So that's where it becomes really scary to allow this, because it may look really good with the design standards and our vision of this may be fantastic, but those uses automatically come with what happens when the problem gets worse, and what do we do with the cars, and how long can they be stored on property, and so those are the concerns. So I like the service. I have spent many hours at the Dairy Queen in Beaver with car problems on my way from point A to point B. So I like the idea of a restaurant where people can go. I think it would do well economically, but whether that's something we want to make permissible is up to me. If I were to say, my gut feeling is to allow the repair as a conditional use, and the restaurant is already allowed, and I wouldn't allow the car lot. Like the auto sales is where it gets iffy for me, because that's when you have a lot of subpar, perhaps recently repaired vehicles on site, and that's where I think we breach the intent of the zoning and the design standards. So we just need to be careful as commissioners not to be swayed by the attractiveness of this project and our excitement for it to get rid of the blight, and make sure that we address the compatibility with the zoning, that issue.
Okay, I want to sort of ask a question of staff, which is that as I was looking at all the different uses, there were the permitted uses, there were the conditional uses, and then there were accessory uses. And
We didn't see those.
they were in between.
Yeah.
Yeah, they went past quickly and we didn't see that, but I'm wondering how an accessory use is defined and what restrictions can be put on that. Because it wouldn't bother me to have a half a dozen reconditioned vehicles there with stickers on them, but I would have a big issue if there were 24. And so that's kind of my question is, what's the purpose of that section of the code, and what kinds of restrictions can be put on accessory uses that would block that being a primary use for anything? Because I really like the concept. I really like the fact that you've tried to make it aesthetically attractive as an entrance to the city. I think that's awesome. I don't want to see something like a BMW lot there. And I don't want to open the door to a BMW lot there.
So in every zone, we have permitted accessory uses, and in every zone, this language is extremely similar. Permitted accessory uses. Accessory uses and structures are permitted in the WG zone, provided they are incidental to, do not substantially alter the character of permitted principal use or structure.
Okay, so incidental to, I could see how this could fit in that. I don't know though. There's some discomfort from the city's end, I know.
Because of the presentation and the site plan details that were shown, as was since stated, the repair garage is a conditional use. Apply for that tomorrow. Restaurant is allowed. You can provide a PPA slipper. So these two zones were written because this section of West Center Street is distressed. And the idea was to get something better there. Car dealerships were intentionally left out because that's not making things better. At the time we wrote this, the people who wrote it and the city council adopted it agreed that car dealerships weren't moving the ball towards getting things better on West Center Street. And that's what is before you. Are you comfortable amending the zone? That's all we're doing tonight is amending the zone to open the door to use new and used car dealerships in this area of the city. That's the question before you. Thank you.
Okay.
You know, yeah, there's like, I mean, that's the question, right? Look at the other abandoned gas station, the Walkers, I guess it was. And then that would potentially be a used car lot, right? Or any other types of properties like that.
Mr. Anderson.
Yeah, for me, I guess I start with just concerns about the zoning approach for the corridor in general. It's been depressing to see the changes that have happened, I think, over the course of the last couple of decades, some of the uses there and how, like I asked about earlier, just how they've come about in a really organic, seemingly kind of disorganized way, not contributing to making any part of this a more attractive, way to arrive into Provo. So I kind of start with that perspective, feeling like something's broken in terms of the approach to the corridor. And then with respect to what's before us right now, I appreciate the intent, but I guess my comfort and confidence can only go as far as the detail that we're given. And I think, as was pointed out, what we were shown doesn't really line up with kind of what actually exists on the ground. And I think that likely would really hinder somebody's ability to execute what we're being asked to consider tonight. So that immediately causes additional discomfort with the idea. And I guess furthermore, the specific uses that are being proposed, in my experience, potentially demand space that's really hard to anticipate. And I think it was alluded to in terms of just what people have casually observed, the propensity for there to be a great demand of space for parking and things like that. It's amazing to me sometimes just exactly, and sometimes it's a function of how well businesses operate in terms of the amount of room that's needed for some of those types of things. And, the way that it's proposed to commingle different uses on the site really makes it hard for me to envision, again, with the detail that we were shown now, how it would more likely succeed than fail. So that's where I'm at.
Okay. Commissioner Mueller.
Yeah, my comment would be that I think it is a really good spot for something like this, like the restaurant. There is definitely a lack of food options there. I've been driving out of Provo and realizing there's nowhere to do a drive-through on my way out or in. just right off the freeway. So I think something like that is a good option, but I feel like this idea is somewhat limited and still just kind of doing the same thing that the building was already purposed for, where I think if you're planning on 75 to 80% of your revenue or transactions being the restaurant, I don't know why you wouldn't think, let's just do the whole thing a restaurant and make it really nice. I think of something like the Wash, where they turned like a car wash into a restaurant. That's great. You could do something like Sonic, but actually nice in this spot. And something cool with it. I think you're kind of just limiting yourself to what's already there. Whereas I feel like you could really actually repurpose this to a really cool restaurant that, has some really good potential. As far as, like you said, location, it's excellent. And there's definitely a need for some food options there. So in my mind, it's not what the city wants as far as car purposes. The restaurant, though, is, I think, a really good idea that you could turn it into something really cool and you wouldn't have to go through a rezone or changing this code. Repurposing it and turning it into like a really cool destination spot for a restaurant. And I think I just feel like sticking with, because it was used for a service station, we should just keep it as a service station. Whereas I think you could do much more with it if you, because it is such a good spot and there's very little competition as far as other restaurants or foods goes. And that was my thought mainly.
Okay, more comments? All right, are we, Commissioner Fife?
Yeah, I guess a question to the commission and to staff as well. How is it possible to make, I guess, one-off exceptions in these conversations, whether it's with this particular situation or others? Are those acceptable, common, or not allowed?
The city can talk to that a little bit more, but I think in general, the idea is that you don't.
Gotcha.
Any one-offs, and it turns out to be everything's a one-off. Okay, other questions or comments from commissioners? Commissioner Jensen.
So automobile repair and service station, how do those differ? In a service station, can you do oil changes, et cetera? So you can do very minor things in a service station, whereas automobile repair would be the next step up. Can you repair flat tires? Can you do emissions tests? Like, what falls under service station?
I don't have the SLU with me. You have the SLU. But I heard that is not helping me. The wording is gasoline service stations. It's the standard language code of 5530. I think that's pretty. I think it's pretty broad in terms of what you can do.
Okay, so everything except for, like you said, everything except for car sales could be allowed if this proposal was denied.
Car sales and their C category and the 9,000 category repairs, but there's 6,000 categories.
But that says that it's not permitted or conditional. But under the land use of service station, what the applicant described could all be allowed minus the auto sales. Thank you.
Well, actually, don't you need to do body repair too? Aren't you refurbishing cars?
Yes.
So that falls right down here under no conditional permit.
So that would be a thing they couldn't do. But they could do other things.
And my question is, he said gasoline service station. Can you have a service station with no gasoline?
Oh, that's true. Mr. Pepperoni?
Sorry.
You said gasoline service station. Can you have a service station but no gasoline?
It's 5530 if that's helpful.
So under 5530, with that same number, 5530, have automobile service stations with or without minor repair, filling stations, gasoline / retail, gas stations / retail, gasoline service stations / retail. All of those are under 5530.
Okay.
This will allow them.
Gas station would be required.
Well, he said automobile service station too, though. Minor repairs. Okay. Okay, so something like a Jiffy Lube.
They also do wheel alignment.
And emissions testing and a few other things.
Probably not.
So, okay. The agenda does not permit that. I'm sorry. Okay, as we're talking about this, are we ready to entertain a motion? Anybody can jump in.
I move to recommend that agenda item number 1 be denied.
Do we need to give findings for denial?
It's consistent with staff report. So the staff report would have this on.
Okay.
With my motion, I'd welcome if any other commissioners want to elaborate on.
We are recommending for denial.
Correct. So with that,
So
if anybody wants to talk about any specific reasons beyond what's in the staff report, I'd entertain that for sure.
That's on the basis of car sales, correct? Like denial.
That's on changing,
Any of the zoning?
Yeah.
adding the text amendment. So to restate that, you're recommending that you're suggesting that
Moving to recommend that.
to recommend that the city council deny approval of the ordinance text amendment to section 1421D 020 in the Provo City Code to add new and used car sales, service stations, and automobile repair as permitted uses in the Western Gateway Zone.
And just to emphasize the findings that I think we all agree on, it's in the staff report, page 3, that it will hinder the articulated policies of the general plan and that it's in conflict with the downtown master plan. I think that we're all pretty much in agreement on those.
Okay. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
That's Commissioner Jensen. Any discussion on the proposal to recommend denial?
For me personally, it breaks my heart to not, like, I love the entrepreneurial spirit of it. Me being one myself. I love the design. I love the idea. It's just too risky from a blanket statement for that entire area. Because I think if you open the door for one, you have to open the door for everybody else. And there's no guaranteeing the design standards, the type of businesses that, or the, I guess, the designs of the businesses that could enter that area. So yeah, just a comment.
Okay. Are we ready to vote? Okay. Commissioner Miller,
Aye.
Commissioner Fife,
Aye.
Commissioner Henry,
Aye.
Commissioner Gonzalez,
Aye.
Commissioner Anderson,
Aye.
Commissioner Jensen,
Aye.
Commissioner Knutson.
Aye.
And
Aye.
aye. Okay. And I vote nay. So that is, how many of us are there? 9?
8-4.
8-4, 1 against. All right. Thank you. And moving on to item number 2. Atlas Tower requests a conditional use permit for a telecommunications monopole tower located at 1499 North, 2200 West in the agricultural A15 zone in the Grandview North neighborhood. Melissa McNally has the staff report.
Thank you and good evening, everyone. So Atlas Tower is seeking a conditional use permit in the Grandview North neighborhood. The parcel is located in the A15 zone, which allows monopole structures such as a cell tower as a conditional use. In Provo City Code, Chapter 1434 250, Section 11, it outlines the conditions that must be met for the structure to be allowed. So Atlas Tower has met those conditions, including a neighborhood meeting where no concerns were raised about the proposed cell tower. However, we did get a letter, city staff and the mayor and the council did receive a letter from a neighbor with some concerns, about the tower size, its appearance, and the potential negative effects of possible 5G transmission. Do we want to move the, sorry.
No, we didn't get a copy of that letter, did we?
Oh. So on this slide, you see the location of the tower. It is right next to I-15, and I've included a map section that shows the slope percentages because it is a pretty steep slope. So the tower is down from the neighborhood. It's not really going to be visible from most of the neighborhood, just for a visual reference of the tower location. So Atlas Tower has agreed to move the tower about 100 feet north of the planned location, just to allow for the 160-foot setback from the residential zone. So that's a slight change from where the tower location is now.
Excuse me, do you have a pointer that you could tell us roughly where that's going to be?
Okay, so this was the proposed, and they'll move it about right here.
Okay, so
100
above
feet
the
north.
other shed?
Yeah.
Okay.
Where is Sound Hill Road? I think it's Sand Hill Road is north of the neighborhood. Yeah. So this is down. This is the hill, Grandview Hill, and this is down the hill. So you can see all this right here are the slope percentages, just to kind of show the steepness that this is like down right next to the freeway, and the residences are quite a ways up.
Is this kind of northwest of Independence High? So like you say, once those houses get way up there.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, it is. That's correct. So as part of this conditional use permit, Atlas Tower is again going to move that location up about 100 feet to satisfy that setback requirement, and they will submit plans signed by a Utah state licensed engineer prior to the pole construction. And staff does recommend approval of this conditional use permit.
Thank you. Commissioners, questions for staff? Commissioner Jensen?
So I wanted to ask you about those neighborhood issues. Is it a tree design as shown in the renderings?
It's my understanding that it is, yes.
And the person that expressed concern about its appearance knew that? Or
Yes. Yes, they felt like it would look like a huge Christmas tree.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, but that's better than a huge radio tower. And the height you say is going to look much smaller than it is because of its location, its setting?
I think it'll look as big as it is from the freeway, but from the neighborhood, I don't think the sight lines will be an issue.
Okay. What about the 5G transmission negative effect? Is that a valid concern? Is that something we should discuss?
The applicant is here to talk about some of those. It is regulated by the FCC. All the radio towers are, so they would follow those laws.
Okay. The last question I had was on page 8 of the staff report. There's a site map that shows spots for future uses, and there's 4 spots there. Do you know what the plan is for those? Maybe this is a question for the applicant, but I'm going to pose it to you just in case. Because my second question of that is, would a tower and the proposed location be a conflict with these leased spaces? in the future? Like if they put the tower where it is, then do those spaces become unable to occupy with anything because there's something else, a radio communication tower there? Or a cell phone tower?
So as far as the potential spaces on the map, that would be a question for the applicant. And I'm not 100% sure what you're asking as far as if we allow this conditional use of this tower, would it enable other towers? Is that your question? or
No,
am
I just didn't know if
misunderstanding?
there was like, it has to be a certain number of feet away from any other use. And so therefore there can't actually be anything there was my.
Yeah, there cannot. There are stipulations that it cannot be within a certain range of other cell
Okay,
towers.
so that's just a marketing thing for them to figure out economically. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, other questions from? Yes. Henry.
Given the tree nature of this, is that going to be similar to the one that's just north of Will's Pit Stop on University Avenue? Are you familiar with that?
I am familiar with that. I think it will be similar. My understanding is that it will be more appealing to the eye than that perhaps might be.
Not necessarily a rectangular tree.
Yeah. Okay. But similar height, general look. Okay. Yeah. Can we get a palm tree?
Yes. Other commissioner questions for staff? All right. I don't see any.
I do have one just
Commissioner
relative to what
Kendall?
Lisa was saying about page 8, it looks like there's 4 spots south of it, but on this aerial, it doesn't look like there's anything there. Like there's not room for anything there, is there? Are these the same?
Yeah, I don't think they're very big sites. I
So
don't think the
tiny
spots are
little-
very big. But I also think that those are in the vicinity of the south of the sheds. And she says that they're going to move it to the north of the north shed. So it's actually on the other side
North of the north shed?
of the second shed.
Okay, so let me show you with the pointer again, because this was roughly the location that was proposed. But because of the distance requirements from a residential zone, it has to be twice the height of the tower. So that's 160-foot setback. So they will be moving it up about 100 feet north of the proposed location. So right around here, so that they can meet that 160-foot setback from the residents.
Are those the pads visible underneath where your cursor just was visible?
I'm sorry, what?
The four pads, are those right there to the lower right of where your laser pointer is right now?
They would be south of that, yeah, down here.
So can you show page 8?
Can you bring that up now on the staff report? Yeah.
So notice that there are two sheds here. There's one here and there's another. So north and south. And then if you look on page 8, you can sort of see the outlines of those two things, if I'm correct.
When you say shed, you're not talking about that red roof thing.
That's correct. This is a sort of barn with a greenhouse. And then there are two other structures that are smaller and they're hash marks here. There's one here. And then there's another one that would be going off this way. And I think what she's talking about is moving the structure, the tower up to here. Is that correct?
Okay.
So I think you maybe even if it's yeah, let's go up one to page 7 and it's a little bit more clear. Yeah, so here are the two. And I think what we're talking about is here. That was my question, is whether it fit with those two things. Okay, other questions for staff?
I have one.
Yes.
And maybe the applicant can speak to this. I did like a street view of the location from the highway. Curious to know if they're going to chop down all those big old trees to replace it with a fake one, or if they're going to leave the trees and still build the tower.
Great question for the applicant.
Okay. And that's a great segue for inviting the applicant to come forward. State your name and city of, is the applicant here? Okay. State your name and city of residence for the record, please.
With Atlas Tower, and I reside in Park City, Utah. I need to read here. Thank you for having us be here. As you see, yes, we are applying for a conditional use permit at 1499 North, 2200 West in Provo. The facility is roughly 2,500 square feet. It's 25 by about 75. And those 4 squares that you see there are to accommodate additional carriers. So that compound space is the only space that we're leasing. And as far as questions go, yeah, the compound space is going to be moved about 100 feet north, and that's just the compound space. So that includes the tower and then space for additional equipment on the ground. That's all. As far as the tree and the trees, yeah, we do. Atlas Tower has a lot of examples of trees that we've done, and we hope that they look better than the one you've mentioned. But yes, and then the older trees, we were actually just on site. We'd probably have to cut down a few of the old trees, but then replace with some either better looking or younger trees for sure. So any questions?
Okay. Commissioner Kendall.
Not all of them. No, we did. There are certainly some older trees. We would have to see if any are in the way, but we try to keep as much as we can. Yeah. To blend in, of course, with the tree.
Does the tree itself interfere with the signal, or is the tower taller than those?
The tower might be similar height to some of the trees. They're pretty tall, but no, the trees will not interfere.
Okay. Other questions for the applicant?
The 80-foot tall tower, is that right?
Correct.
Co-location then?
Yes.
You
So
said 4 maybe different?
we always hope for co-location, and that's why you want less towers for the height.
Yeah.
The higher you go, the more carriers you can get onto a tower. So our carrier, I think I can say who it is Verizon. They have done their radio frequency study at 75 feet, which works for their coverage. And they're looking to cover a lot of the freeway and then some of the neighborhood as well. So
Other improvements to the site aside from, and I'm going to apologize, I just lost access to the staff report. So the compound doesn't exist today, right?
no,
There's nothing there, so you'd be fencing that.
yes.
What
we'd
kind of
be fencing it.
fencing is proposed?
It's usually just a chain link fence that, yeah, unless you guys require anything different, we can do anything. We can do wood, but the current landlord has some chickens and stuff in there right now. So of course we'd be fencing it to keep animals out.
Other stuff that's on the ground, have like a generator outside, or is that in nothing
Everything will be just in the compound.
in
fenced.
in a structure or within the fence?
Within the fence.
Okay.
Mhm.
So what will you see? Like if it's a chain link fence, what would you see there? You see some kind of a
Just
building that houses some equipment, or is it?
yeah, it's pretty
all-
much just the pole and then yeah, some electrical boxes. But nobody except the landlord pretty much can see most of that stuff there. Yeah, it's about
Is that
6 feet
because
high.
of the grade that nobody can see it? That's it. Okay.
To go visit. Yeah. And I have met personally with the homes to the east, just above them. So
Okay, Commissioner Jensen?
Would you address the 5G concern that the neighbor expressed? Is that a valid concern that the 5G transmission would be dangerous?
I'm going to let my partner, Mike Powers, he is an attorney with Atlas Towers, come up if I can.
Thank you.
Speak to that. Thank you.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Mike Powers. I work also for Atlas Tower, which is a Boulder, Colorado-based company, but we've been working in this market for over 15 years and have worked in many of your neighbors from Woods Cross all the way to Provo and beyond. And interestingly, I approached the previous applicant property years ago to build a cell tower. It didn't work, but been working this market for quite a while. So I wanted to just add a few details and also address the specific question at hand. So let me start with the bullet points. First, our industry is heavily regulated by multiple portions of the government, including the FCC and the FDA and other regulatory bodies, primarily or almost completely federal regulatory bodies. But the design, the manufacture, the installation, the use, and all of the ancillary equipment is heavily regulated, and it has been proven to be safe, not just by the 1996 Telecommunications Act in federal law, but over time, those regulation standards are continuously being improved over time. Second bullet point, I can talk about RF safety all day long, but I do think it's very important, since this is a local government regulatory body, that I make a quick comment about the supremacy clause of the U.S. Constitution. I think it's Article 6, Section 2, where it basically says that if a local or state governmental body has rules that either don't directly conflict with the federal government, or if the federal government has rules that essentially completely regulate that specific industry or activity, that the supremacy clause says that the federal government controls. So just by way of example, when you go to Target and buy some sort of medicine because you're sick, you understand intuitively that the local government nor the state of Utah regulates the manufacture, distribution, and use of that, because that's an FDA issue. It's the same with the FCC. So the FCC totally controls, and very tightly and strictly controls, all of the concerns about health effects. Third bullet point is quick history on the word G, 1G, 2G, 3G. 1G was analog radio, very simple. 2G was sort of the same with a digital signal. 3G was when we got into data and phone. So we had two different things going on. We had voice and data. 4G, everything was combined into one standard, where data and the phone calls were turned into data, and it was all data. I'm generalizing a lot, but now we get to 5G. 5G is very similar to 4G, except two things. One, it doesn't really have a standard. It's really more of a marketing phrase at this point, because there are several different interpretations of what 5G is. And the second point I want to emphasize repeatedly is that the 5G frequencies and technology has always been part of what the FCC has regulated in terms of manufacture, use, control, et cetera. So the same regulation that applies to 4G, including the testing and continuous improvement for safety, has always applied to the same frequencies that are being branded as 5G. Most 4G signals are generally in the 600 to 800 megahertz, and then 5G theoretically could go up to 100 gigahertz. I don't think anyone's using a frequency that high, but the FCC has been regulating and studying and making sure all of those frequencies are safe, not just the 4G regulations. This was litigated in 2019, federal district court, I think in the Ninth Circuit had a challenge that basically said, well, this 5G technology is new. We need more regulations. We need proof that it works. And the federal court and in that jurisdiction said, no, the FCC has adequately proved that they have been testing and regulating those frequencies all along. And that was approved in the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals. And then it was pushed back down for a technical administrative law thing. So this kind of goes around and around, but I'm giving you a general view of what's happening with the law, with the eye towards saying that 5G is regulated just like 4G. There's nothing really new going on there in terms of testing and concern for safety. And it is safe. And there are many organizations that you know and trust, like the U.S. Cancer Society, the FCC itself, the FDA as well, and other organizations that have many experts that continue to look at this issue have said it's safe. And then back to the supremacy clause, because this is totally controlled by the federal government, it is my legal opinion and many others that if you make a decision based on that issue at this level of government, you will have based your decision on a factor that you don't have the control over because it is so preempted. Sorry, I hope that was helpful. This is pretty thick stuff. It's really hard to get through in a short presentation.
Thank you. Commissioners, other questions for the applicant? Okay.
I have one more comment, actually a legal comment, and that is that we are requesting, I think Carrie touched on it, but I don't want to say it. We are requesting that you approve our application with the condition that we do move the site from the location where it is now to meet the 200% setback of the tower. I'm not sure how that calculation wasn't included in the original location, but we both are requesting that formally to you as you hopefully consider a motion to approve, that you put that as a condition of approval, and we'll submit revised plans and go through the building permit process with that setback achieved. And thought I had one more comment. Oh, the other comment was that we visited the site right before we came to see you here tonight. And it is very clear that moving further northwest, this site will be even less visible to the community. And I would say almost impossible to be seen from virtually any of the houses other than 2 or 3 houses just above this location.
Okay.
Yeah, 2 things. One, with the movement of the monopole more northwest, does that impact your coverage expectations? And then the second thing was the property owner kept apprised of the new or the requirement for the setback requirement?
No and yes, respectively. So the coverage objective is primarily the highway. And so by moving north, another 100 feet is irrelevant. And yes, Carrie is in constant contact with landlord, and he is that individual is in agreement that we can move the site to meet the setback.
Thanks.
Yeah. Oh, I have one more interesting comment about 5G. 5G doesn't go very far. The smaller the frequency, the more susceptible it is to being disturbed or destroyed by objects. And so 5G is more of an ancillary technology right now to 4G, because 4G does transmit through glass and walls and stuff much better than 5G. And I point that out in the context of the of the very, very recent emails and comments about health effects from locations or people that live pretty far away. Any 5G technology that works the way the current technology is available today would not possibly reach many of these houses at all. In other words, that technology probably will do an okay job of talking to the devices in the cars on the highway that are really close. But the 5G technology that's being used right now is not going to move up that hill and into homes even a quarter mile away. It's just not going to work that way.
Okay, thank you. Do you have a question?
Wondered who decides what tree the tree will look like? What kind of foliage will it look like?
So
who makes that decision?
Yeah, so Alice Tower takes great pride in trying to change the perception of monopines. I live in Colorado, and early in the days of stealth tree poles, there was a lot of put a sticker on it kind of stealthing, like a giant tower with a really small windmill at the top that looked absurd, and they would call that a windmill, and it was stealth. The same happened with trees. I think a lot of the early trees had a few Charlie Brown branches on it, and they called it good. And it didn't look good. As a company, we generally spec our trees to be at least a density of 3 branches per foot. And that's significantly more dense than many of our competitors. And it will look, particularly at a distance of 50 to 100 feet, it will look much better than many of the other trees that you might have seen in this community that were perhaps developed 5 or 10 years ago. They've gotten better, a lot better.
Okay. All right, thank you very much.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Do we have a neighborhood chair here to address this issue? That would be Grandview Neighborhood Chair. No? Do we have community comment for this issue? Please come to the podium, state your name and city of residence.
Before I approach the podium, how long do I have to put a time?
3 minutes.
And then what happens after 3 minutes?
You need to stop. We have a hole that opens up and slide down.
Okay, my name's Karen Salmon. I live just a block or 2 west of the pictures that we saw. First of all, an 80-foot pine tree will not look good. We're not fooling anybody by putting branches on a big pole. Like, just don't even consider that. To me, that's mocking people and their intelligence. I do believe that 5G is an issue that has to be dealt with. And there's a lot of health hazards that come with it. Even though the FCC regulates, there's a lot of damaging health things that have happened to people from cell phone use and the transmissions. 5G signifies 5th generation wireless technology. It's said to provide faster and higher transmission capacity, uses a band of radio spectrum that has never been used before for cellular data networks. Therefore, its effects have not been tested. 5G uses a shorter wavelengths measured in millimeters rather than centimeters. It has less than 2% of the 4G range, meaning that hundreds of thousands, possibly millions of new towers will be needed in the country. And so even though we say this is the one tower here, how many will be needed to cover Provo? And so this one will by no means be the last. They will need to be densely located to provide the coverage. Let's see. Some of the long-term exposure. Short-term exposure can have adverse physiological effects such as peripheral nervous system, the immune system, and the cardiovascular system. These are proven in scientific studies that have been done, many of them in Europe that I was able to find. Long-term exposure poses health risks such as melanoma, ocular melanoma in the eyes, and problems in the reproductive system, particularly in men. Since 5G is a new technology, there is little research. However, we have considerable evidence from the harmful effects of 2G and 3G. So we can assume and deduct that 5G will be more of that. 5G will not replace 4G. It will accompany it for the near future and possibly over the long run. If there's synergistic effects from simultaneous exposure to multiple types of radiation, our overall risk of harm will increase. Cancer is not the only risk there is. Also evidence from the EMFs that causes neurological disorders and reproductive harm. A few studies showed that effects of 5G or of...
Your time is up. I do have one question. It goes fast, doesn't it?
Can I sit down and then stand up again?
No, unfortunately. I do have one question for you. You said you live to the west. Is that on the other side of the freeway?
I live to the east.
Oh, to
I
the
said
east.
to the right, I think.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry, I misheard.
Madam
Okay.
Chair, may I ask a question as well?
Yes, Commissioner Anderson has a question.
Quickly, do you have like a mobile phone?
I do.
You do? Okay. That's it.
And I am trying to learn how to turn off the 5G because it's new.
Okay.
But I just want to say that one of the stipulations for this is that it is, I got to read what it is.
Okay.
It's stated in Ordinance 14-02-040, a proposed conditional use shall be granted unless the subject use will be detrimental to the health, safety, or general welfare of persons residing in the vicinity. I live in the vicinity, and I believe that it will be damaging to my health, to my children's, and to all of the neighbors there.
Okay.
And I feel like we should just pause for a minute before we jump into it. Take a break, at least continue it rather than accepting it. But I would like you to deny it right now until we gather more information about the effects of 5G, which you can all find online.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Do we have any other community comments? Yes. Again, state your name and city of residence for the record.
Me. I'm Sue Swager, 1982 West, 1600 North in Provo, same neighborhood, Grandview Hill. I didn't know about any neighborhood meeting. I wasn't given any information that this tower was even going in. I had no clue. And I'm politically active. I email my congressman, my senators, my mayor, I knew nothing about this. Hence, you have an empty room because I would bet that everyone else is in my position. This is such new technology. We don't know the benefit. We don't know the harm or the consequences of this new technology. But I really think in the last 2 years, we have learned how important local leadership is. We have seen cities just ran over, and the only protection we have is what we have locally. And so that's one thing that I think we've all learned in the last 2 years. I really think there's a responsibility to inform the citizens. This is going near you. These are the pros. These are the cons. As leaders, we want to educate you. As people who are installing this, we want to educate you. I knew nothing. And I just don't think that's right in a community. And I don't think it's right in Provo. So I'm here unprepared. I haven't researched. I haven't looked into things that I usually do, because I didn't know. And so I think this room would be full, but nobody knew. So that's my main concern. I don't think that's how a community should be run. I don't think that's how a community should be planned. More and more homes are going down Grandview Hill towards the freeway. They're beautiful homes. They're big and beautiful homes being built closer and closer to the freeway. And so that's my concern here tonight, is I would have liked to have been informed. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other community comments? All right, the public comment portion of the issue is closed. Commissioners, we have an opportunity to discuss this.
I think it's simple. As a conditional use, there's no question about it being approved or not. It's just whether or not we feel there's a reason to impose additional conditions to mitigate any, known negative impacts that might, or I guess I'd even say reasonably foreseeable negative impacts.
I don't think it can be approved unless it's approved as a conditional use.
Correct, but as a conditional use, there's no question about it being approved. It's just a matter of whether or not it's appropriate. To
Because
impose
it's
any
permitted. You're
Additional
right.
conditions.
So it's not a matter of yes or no. And I've got to say that I am so excited to get access to 5G, at least more robustly in Provo than what previously existed. It's great to, in that regard, just have better access to service.
Thank you. Other comments from?
What does conditional use mean?
Commissioner Pepperoni, the question is, what does conditional use mean? Not Commissioner, but Mr. Pepperoni.
So a conditional use means it has, the use has an additional layer of review, of analysis to debate and talk about the issues that Mr. Anderson raised. What are the impacts that this use could create? And are those impacts being adequately mitigated? I think it's my understanding of the cell tower federal legislation that denying one over health concerns is not something local government can do. That's not within our jurisdiction. So Mr. Anderson's question was correct. This is a conditional use permit. Are there impacts that this is creating that need to have some additional mitigation measures put on this, conditions put on it, other than relocating the pole according to the setbacks that are necessary? Does that help?
Yes, thank you. Okay, more comments? Commissioner Jensen.
Can anyone confirm if there was a neighborhood meeting?
Yes, there was a neighborhood meeting held.
Do we know how many people attended?
I believe it was just the neighborhood chair and Councilwoman McKay.
So is it possible that it wasn't widely announced?
I think we have a letter from somebody who also attended.
It was a letter from the chair
Oh,
that
and
you
then somebody
received.
else said, I agree.
That was Councilor McKay.
Okay, so
Yeah.
those are the only.
So according to our noticing requirements, we are, and I know that the applicant did this, they noticed within 500 feet of the project. So anybody who has, you did 1,000?
1,000
Okay,
feet.
awesome. So within 1,000 feet of the project, notices were sent to those neighbors.
Okay, how many houses were included in that 1,000 feet? 78? Okay, so those all got notices? All right, thank you. Okay, any other questions?
I just wanted,
Commissioner Henry.
just as a matter of discussion, maybe that 78 people being invited to a meeting and none of them coming sends kind of a message to me that 78 people didn't care about the project. So I don't know if that's a positive or negative thing, but that's kind of feedback in and of itself.
Yeah, Commissioner Henry.
Just one, I guess, clarification. I don't know if this really sways me one way or another, but just using Google Earth for a very simple, obviously not engineered grading plan. It's about 30 feet from the back pool deck of the nearest home in elevation change to the floor of where this tower would be. So I don't know if that helps, but that I think it's been indicated that these people won't see that tower. I disagree.
They'll see the top 50 feet.
Yeah, they'll see that. Well,
Or the top.
from the property line level to the middle of the tower, there's 50 feet more or less. But I mean, we see perspective. We're going to see the tower below us and above us, and there are other trees in the area. So whether that's an issue or not, But I just wanted to make clear that the neighborhood will see it, and it's been proposed that they won't. I do believe it will be visual in that neighborhood.
Okay. Other comments? All right. Are we ready to entertain a motion?
I would just say, I'm sympathetic to health issues. I just did a quick search and there was a great article in Nature that actually reviewed 300 studies, 107 of them relating to humans, and didn't come up with any effects, negative effects at this point. There's always things we're never going to know, but our job here is not that. Unfortunately, the federal government has charge of that portion of it, so we can't even weigh in on it. So it is a conditional use question, and therefore that's our question and what we have to answer today. So,
yeah. Commissioner Kendall is a medical doctor, by the way, so I do trust the research.
This is the question at hand, unfortunately.
Yeah. Yeah, we have to deal with the questions that are before us and not expand beyond what our purview allows. Do we have any more comments before we do a motion? And is somebody ready for a motion? Oh, Commissioner Jensen.
So if it looks like this is something that should be allowed in the area due to the fact that it's a conditional use, what conditions would we want to impose on it besides the ones already listed in the staff report, if anything? Are we fine with the fencing? Are we fine with the access? Are we fine with the proposed imagery? I feel like that's what we should be talking about, right? Is if this is a conditional use, what conditions do we want to impose on it to make sure that it gets done well?
Which one first?
I'll take a stab. And I'm going to ask maybe staff to help or anybody else that understands the situation better than I do. But as I understand it, like the equipment at ground level is not necessarily going to be visible. So like providing additional screening around that, additional landscaping around that to just enhance the site and make it look better in the neighborhood. I'm getting the impression that it's believed that that's just kind of a waste, not effective. Do you have a thought on that?
I believe that's probably true just
Okay.
because of the way that the slope is and it's not visible. I guess to protect maybe the animals that are on the property and protect the equipment from the animals.
Yeah, just for security purposes, you're saying, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. Those are the only conditions that I would be inclined probably to entertain. I mean, the tree look, I think, is what it is. And I think it has gotten better. Those are my thoughts.
Do you know the height of the other trees that are in that area? No.
I do not.
Do you have any of that? I mean, it's not unusual for a tree to be 40 to 60 feet, but 80 feet is kind of high.
I can't testify to a height, but we were there earlier and there are some very mature cottonwood trees, which typically are like maybe 60 feet. And the cottonwoods are big.
Okay, so maybe 60 feet, but this would still be another 20 feet above that.
There is
Okay.
vegetation that has its roots on the hillside is also taller than the structure we're proposing. So
Okay,
it's a pretty good site in terms of that.
thank you. Commissioner Kendall, did you have?
No, it's just the tree. I don't know. The one on University Avenue, just sorry, it doesn't look like it even belongs in this environment. So could we pick one that looks like it belongs in the environment? That's the only thing.
Well, about the tree, would you rather see a tree that doesn't look like it belongs or a big cell phone tower without a disguise on it? Like, obviously I don't want a windmill that's stickered on, but you're right.
Pick an indigenous tree.
Like a cottonwood tree as opposed to an evergreen.
Or anything that looks like it could actually be living
And grew up square.
So not a palm tree. My dreams are just dashed.
Okay, Commissioner Henry.
Yeah, I just had a question pop up that, so they're only leasing this 2,500 square feet, but there's an access road to it. Is there an easement that access has to be always maintained? Is that part of the lease? how does that access road connect to it? Or how does that connect to this lease?
Nodding, but
The applicant would have to speak to that.
Okay.
So like many commercial leases, there's the primary purpose, which is the leased premises for the
Mhm.
the monopine and the equipment. And then there are ancillary rights of access and utility. So we have a utility path to bring power and
Access
fiber optic
easement.
cable through to the site, so that those are included in the rental lease agreement.
Okay.
And there are some statements about maintenance and so on. It is currently a very dusty, loose driveway and steep. And without a doubt, we will fix that with many truckloads of crushed gravel of some sort, because we will be moving up and down that driveway with heavy equipment, so that the driveway will be improved, but it'll still be a sort of natural, not asphalt or concrete type of access
Yeah,
path
access there.
that'll be consistent with that property.
And I assume the property owner is not here tonight? Okay, and with this change of the move, I mean, obviously it's going to make that access road shorter, but I assume the property owner's fine with that. That shouldn't affect that access road.
No, all I can say is that we have spoken to the landlord and the owner of the land, and he is amenable to the move, and obviously some ancillary changing of access and utility easement, which will all very shortly be surveyed and incorporated into a new set of construction documents, and absolutely be sent to planning staff for review and be part of our submittal for building permit.
For building permit?
Yep.
Okay. Okay.
Okay.
One other question for staff. Are there any landscape requirements for this type of conditional use, or is it just whatever happens to be that zone?
Just whatever is in the zone.
It's whatever's in the zone. Okay.
okay. Yes, Commissioner Miller.
What was I say? Oh, I think in my mind, I guess the conditions that we just want to make sure are included then would be that the landlord or the landowner is aware of the move. And I think that's, in my mind, would be the only condition, and maybe along the lines of the design of the pole. I mean, if they can keep as many old growth trees as possible, that'd be great. Because in my mind, like, we could talk about them planting some dinky little bushes around it, but it makes more sense to leave the old growth trees to cover up as much as it can. That would be, in my mind, the most logical.
So what I'm hearing is, beyond the two conditions that are already in the staff report, which are that it is to be moved to the 2 times the height of the monopole, and then also that the plans have to be approved by a Utah State engineer. We would like to also include conditions that, now I'm trying to remember exactly how you put that, the species of tree be as close to something that would be native as is possible. And that the natural vegetation that is also screening would be protected to the greatest extent possible. Is that? They're not going to, okay. Commissioner Henry.
Yeah, just for discussion on that, these homes are above it. So a 6-foot fence around it is not going to block any view
right
into it. As well as from the freeway, it is higher on a hill, so maybe that's not a big deal from the freeway side. But definitely from that eastern side, it would seem to me to have some shade trees that block that view from the hill above. Looking into the maintenance fenced yard of this particular project.
What do you think maybe about like a 1-for-1 or 2-for-1 for every tree they remove, they replace that one plus? I mean, that's something they might have to work out with the property owner, because that wouldn't be within the compound, it'd be outside of it.
That would be outside the
Just something.
compound.
I like what you said. That's the one thing that The only thing I can think of by way of
Yeah, is to put
some
some
mitigating.
shade trees that have at least a minimum of 30 feet at maturity. But yeah, that would fall on the owner, since it would be on his property.
Which is their problem.
Yeah.
Okay.
Good question. I don't know how to address that one.
Give it a number. If we're talking about having this be a condition, do we want to say for every tree you remove, we'd like you to plant 2 more?
I did speak to the neighbors who live up above this property, and they actually are also looking down at a billboard, and they were psyched for the cell tower versus they said, can you take the billboard down? And they had no problem. So I also worry about planting more trees for the neighbors up above. I consider them, and they had no problem with the cell tower. I personally met with them.
I did notice that it actually said a large billboard
Yeah, it's
on the
pretty
site plan to point out this is not the only thing sticking out visually here.
And there's a lot of stuff on the freeway as well across the way that they look at. But
Okay.
do we want to put a number on trees, or is that within our purview to even do that?
I'll go either way.
If we do, we could probably suggest something that trees over a certain diameter.
2-inch caliper is probably
When they plant.
The ones that
2-inch
are,
caliper is probably what's in the code now. So
or for the
For
ones that are being
replacement?
removed. Like if there's a
Yeah. Well,
there's a 30-inch, diameter tree, we would want a 2-for-1 or a 3-for-1, something like that.
yeah.
So maybe just say something that compares to what was removed? Leave it vague like that, or do you want to put a number on it?
1 tree for every 6-inch diameter.
Yeah, I think,
No.
I think
No,
that
you're
it would
not.
be something comparable myself, that
You could just say comparable, and that's good enough language.
a comparable
Comparable
at
tree
ma-
replacement.
at maturity.
Comparable at maturity. Yeah, that works.
I like that.
Do we want 1-for-1 or 2-for-1?
Yeah. The landscape architect probably has some comments on that, but being as it involves the owner, I'm not sure that we can put that on the applicant without
Yeah.
consulting with the owner.
That's where I'm stuck on that is. Yeah, I'm not really sure.
I mean, it's
Okay.
one thing to require somebody to plant trees. I've been involved with that quite a bit, where trees don't get cared for, they die. So I'm maybe starting to have second thoughts about that. But the concept,
Yeah.
I think, is great, but execution becomes too hard. And it might all be for naught.
And if the neighbors above really did
Yeah.
not care, did they, we can't know, but did they fully know what was going in the fenced area? We don't know.
The applicant is nodding.
Yes.
I think we
So-
just say, try to keep it as natural as it already is. There's already large trees there. If they have to cut some down, it is what it is. But I just imagine we can.
Replace them.
So
with
just say
something-
leave
I'm
as
sure
many
they will
native
try.
trees as possible and replace where.
If needed.
Okay.
They are replacing a 1-for-1. It's just a fake tree.
Yeah, so, okay. Are we ready for a motion, and is somebody prepared to offer that?
I would be happy to offer it because I've been trying to get these conditions written down. I would like to make a motion that we approve Atlas Towers conditional use permit application for a telecommunications monopole tower located at 1499 North, 2200 West in the agricultural A15 zone in the Grandview North neighborhood, with the conditions that the monopole site be moved at least 150 feet to the north to satisfy the 160-foot distance requirement from the residential zone boundary, that the final set of plans will be approved by a Utah state licensed engineer, that the species of tree chosen for the tower design be similar to the native vegetation, and that the applicant leave as many native trees as possible and replace for comparable vegetation as needed.
Okay, do we have a second?
I can second that.
That was Commissioner Miller. All right, do we have any discussion on the motion? I think we should commend Commissioner Jensen for getting all that down in order. Okay. Are we ready to vote? Okay, Commissioner Miller,
Aye.
Commissioner Henry,
Aye.
Aye.
Commissioner Anderson.
Aye.
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 And I vote aye. Thank you. That is item number 2. Do we need to take a break? Or do we want to hurry on through? I think we can hurry on through with number 3.
Item 3 standing.
Okay, item 3 on our agenda. Becky Bogdin requests approval of zone map amendments for 6.3 acres of property from the R1.8 one family residential zone to the PF public facilities and OSPR open space preservation and recreation zones located approximately at 1265 South 500 West in the Lakewood neighborhood. And John Weaver has the staff report.
Hi, to get you guys familiar with this area, this is down west of I-15, just actually adjacent to I-15, against 15th South and kind of borders, I believe, 500 West. Part of that area, it was formerly known as Powerline Park. And to give you an idea, the pointer, is that, oops. The Powerline Park kind of ended about there. And this whole area right there is currently facilitating as a park. Current zoning for this area is R18, and there's a little piece in the south east area that's PF. And currently, this parcel right here, if you cut it off here, this whole area is owned by Provo City. The remaining parcels north of that are owned by Utah Power and Light Company. What we're proposing to, applicants proposing to change is to rezone the Provo City property to the OSPR Open Space Preservation Recreation Zone, and the remaining parcels will be zoned to the Public Facility Zone. Now, the OSPR zone is only for publicly owned parcels. The PF zone does allow for privately enterprises to own those parcels and to use them as a park. It is a permitted land use. And we have an agreement with the owner to use that for this. Also, this proposal aligns with the park's master plan that they recently adopted, and they have this area designated as a park for the Lakewood neighborhood. Are there any questions for staff?
Just to make sure when you have private property in the PF zone, if it's done as a park, it's still a public park, right?
Correct. The purpose and objectives of the PF zone says that the PF zone is established to provide areas for locations and the establishment of facilities which under public franchise ownership or private enterprises operating for the public convenience for necessity to provide public services and utilities and such and city parks.
So if a private owner wanted to put a pavilion on their parcel, they could do that, but it would have to be open to public use.
If they wanted to.
I mean, I can't imagine they would, but I'm just trying to, it's a hypothetical. Okay.
I have a question.
Commissioner Jensen has a question.
So it's already being used as a park. We're just changing the label that's on it. Is there any obligation? Like, does Utah Power and Light, am I remembering who the owner is? Is that right?
So
do they have already an agreement with the city that it's a park? Because the infrastructure appears to already be there.
Correct. They already have an agreement here with the city
And do they have a problem with this?
No, they do not.
Okay. Is there any infrastructure in the area that's designated OSPR already, or is that vacant right now?
The only OSPR area in this OSPR zone in this area would be the Footprinters Park.
I mean on this proposal.
No.
Is it just an empty field right now?
When we rezoned everything to the OSPR zones a year or so ago, this was not on that initially.
Is there any infrastructure in that purple section on this map right now?
It's currently a vacant field, and then that area in the bottom right is a power transformer.
Okay, so the area that is owned by Utah Power and Light is the only part that currently has park-looking things on it.
Correct. Currently, Parks has a concept for this, but that's not coming forward yet. But they have things in the works for this whole area.
Okay, my other question is, regarding process. So we try not to rezone without proposals for development, which is kind of, like we want to see what you're planning on doing. And this is a rezone that's just like maybe to match better what's there, but we're also doing it so that it aligns with the general plan, it sounds like. So is the general plan intention sufficient reason to rezone? Or do we need a promise from Provo Parks Department to assume that this land is slated for the assumed use?
So they are aware of this going forward. They are in support of these rezones along with the Parks and Recs master plan. This went to, I believe it may have been a work or evening session at council that this was brought up to light. And they recommended that we move forward with coming back with Becky Bogdin as the applicant for changing this, rezoning this area for the Lakewood neighborhood.
So we're comfortable doing this on a slightly different pattern because it's a park.
Yes, and in addition, to answer your question, this parcel is not on the Parks Department capital improvement list. So this hasn't been funded yet.
Okay.
But we all understand.
But their thumbs up is equivalent to a project plan approval that we would see. Okay.
Okay, any other questions for staff?
I apologize, one additional thing. There was a neighborhood meeting that was held, and that was held a couple weeks ago, and this has been on Open City Hall, and I reviewed all the comments, and all the comments are positive for this.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Anderson?
Does Provo City lease this from Rocky Mountain Power?
There's an agreement in place between Provo City and the ownership for these parcels.
And it probably specifies like use, like that it
Correct.
needs to be a park, and
Yes.
they have limitations as to what you can plant there and that kind of, so that in particular makes me comfortable with this, that there's that layer of protection or just existence in place already.
Okay, anything else, commissioners? All right, I don't see anything, so.
I had a question about what kept any homes from being built on this site? Because it seems like this would be normally an infill site that people would build homes on, but is that what it was? Oh, okay. Interesting.
So there's not a power facility here?
Very important, that light purple is power substation.
That's really helpful to know. I appreciate that.
Okay. Anything else?
Could we get maybe an overview of what's currently as far as like parks there in that area, what they have access to already?
They currently, the footprint of park down 1150 South and west of 11th West would be right adjacent to where the future middle school is going to be. That would be the closest public park.
Gotcha. I guess I could just pull it up here on Google Maps.
Okay,
Okay.
anything else? All right, we would invite Becky to come forward. State your full name and city of residence, please, for the record. Well, not middle name or whatever, but first and last name, city of residence.
This went to the city council, I think back in February. And they brought it up and it was a unanimous vote that this go forward the way it is. They're the ones that recommended the public facilities for the upper portion and the OSPR for the lower portion. And then I am the applicant here. Also, Energy has no interest to sell or build anything on this property because as the west side progresses, they need extra transformers, and this is the place that is designated to put those. And there's a letter from Travis Ball stating that a park and those transformers are good to go and they're happy with it. So Energy's happy with it. There is a pheromone dosing station there. And as far as I know, Public Works has no issue with that. There's a Google Fiber building there, and there's no issues with it being compatible with the park. The upper section actually did have homes on it years ago, and they were condemned, and UPNL came in and bought those. That's why they're all parceled out. And so they have decided it is a park. When we redid, the neighborhood matching grant, we obviously didn't cover all of the playground equipment, but we did do work to help with that. Anything that goes on that does need the permission of UPNL. So when we moved the equipment, so it was further away from Fifth West, and even the design of it all had to be pre-approved through them before then. So any kind of pavilion, any kind of potty, that the only thing it has on it is just simply the playground. All of that has to go to the open space area to the south. And so that will be our park, and we're excited to have it.
Okay, thank you.
Any questions? I live in Lakewood. I live down on Lakewood Drive. So now, yeah, Javin's point. I live down there. I'm the neighborhood chair. And so where I can file applications for free, I'm the designated one. And Javin is acting kind of as my chair so it's a separation of duties of saying what he has seen neighborhood comment for. Yeah, the neighborhood, as far as I know, is very, very excited for potties, especially since you have little kids, for a pavilion and for the expansion area of the park. Any questions? All right, thanks.
Thank you.
Laurie, if I may, up here is the footprint of park up in this area where the bicycle wheels are. So that's the closest city park that they have.
Okay, thank you.
It's west of here. It's west of this road. That's right, starting here.
And the lack of amenities.
Footprinter doesn't have a lot, does it?
No, it doesn't have anything.
It has baseball fields. It's basically.
Yes. And that's why they have that nasty little river that they're gonna hopefully.
Restrictions on those type of parks. They have to be natural. So whatever you use that money to buy the property.
Okay, thank you. All right, do we have any other public comment for this? If you could state your first and last name and city for the record.
Leah Hill, Provo, Lakewood. As a matter of fact, if you look at that Google map, right next to that transformer station, that's my house. Right, like literally next door when we had to replace our power main.
Laser pointer if you want
Yeah.
to say.
Oh, I don't have it. Yeah. Anyway, it's right there. It's my house. So, well, anyway, you get what I'm saying. And I just wanted to say, yeah, emphatic support from the neighborhood. And I just wanted to spend 2 hours of my Wednesday night to say that literally on public record. And I just want to thank Becky for all the work she does on our neighborhood and for keeping us informed in this kind of stuff and for her efforts on our behalf, because it really is on our behalf. I've got 2 babies, a 1 and a 2-year-old, and they play on that street. And we would just love to have that area designated as a park. We don't want, not super thrilled at the idea of other people being able to come apply, and not a big fan of a pocket neighborhood there. We would just love to have that zoned as a park and feel kind of sleep a little better at night in that way. So that's literally all I came to say. So
Thank you.
guys.
Okay, anyone else for public comment? All right, we'll close the public comment portion of the meeting. Commissioners, discussion on this particular issue. Commissioner Anderson?
Hey, Bill. History lesson. Can you, the pocket park concept? Pocket neighborhood? Okay, sorry. Yeah, neighborhood. What was kind of the nature of that? How did that come about? How far did it get?
I don't know if you remember, but years ago, we actually had Ross Chapin. We invited Ross Chapin in to educate us about pocket neighborhoods. He's the godfather of those things. We even bought some of his home plans, and we designed this parcel to have, I think, 16 cottages on it, if I remember right. And our whole reasoning for that was to bring new families and new investment into the neighborhood and try to buoy the neighborhood up. This was under John Curtis's reign. We got chased out of that neighborhood with pitchforks and torches. And so it went dormant ever since then. Well, we had a concept plan for it. We had home plans for it. We had city employees lining up to buy the cottages if we could get it approved. We abandoned it.
The property owner was on board with the concept. There was nothing that would have
Property owner, Provo
prevented that.
City. So Provo City was saying,
How did I misunderstand that? I thought Provo City owns it.
Provo City owns that piece. They have the corridor along there, but we have the park. We have the biggest piece.
Purple area, I think, was the city.
It's owned by Provo City. The more linear part is, and the 16 homes would have been spread throughout the whole.
No, the 16 homes were just on that purple area that's marked OSPR.
Okay.
Yeah. And I think that's a big reason why the neighborhood would like to pursue this, because they want to make sure that we don't have this argument again that's locked up as open space. Is that correct? Yeah. Yeah.
Changes entirely how I look at it. I appreciate that.
Sure.
Thank you. Okay, any other commissioner discussion, comments? I think that area needs park. I mean, I've driven on that road on occasion, and it is a pretty just blank area, a blank slate waiting for something to happen. Yeah.
It's a dream come true. Especially if there is a cell phone tower designed like a palm tree just up the road. It has a very cottage feel to it. I'm totally kidding.
Okay. We're going downhill here.
It was Melissa.
No, it was the palm tree. All right. If we don't have any discussion on the issue, do we want to have a motion? Somebody ready to make that?
I'm ready to make a motion, or for someone else to make a motion because I talk too much, but I just want to point out that we hear all the time regarding the Southwest Provo plan, that we need a mix of housing, we need diverse housing, we need housing for all types. And so I just want to mark this as a lost opportunity where the people said we want single family small lot sizes, and we gave them one in a place nobody wants to build a house, and they said no. So that's sort of a sad loss for me, that this was an opportunity that was missed. But I have absolutely no problem with this proposal if it's the thing that's going to sell. So, and it meets a need, and everyone's on board with it. I'm good with that.
I just want to second that when you put any development up against a park, the development's going to lose every time. And I was a little sad. I had many conversations with Robert about this parcel, but I would like to see the city find another place to try a pocket neighborhood, maybe in a new development. But I'm good with this as a park as well. I think it works as a park. There are some drawbacks to it as housing, the freeway, obviously. But I agree that is a missed opportunity for the pocket neighborhood, and I hope we find somewhere else that we can do one.
Commissioner Anderson?
Well, and I mean, I think this is a great example of an opportunity missed. It's been said. And if every time a proposal is made to maybe provide a little bit different type of housing in close proximity to somebody's property, you know what the reaction is going to be. And that tests the mettle of communities and what they really want, and whether they're in it for the long view or just to make the people that are in front of them on any given night happy. And I think that this particular item that I had heard about, but wasn't that familiar with the details of, it changed the direction of housing development throughout Provo in a very, very negative way. Just that NIMBY, not in my backyard reaction to the proposal that was denied at some level before. And that's not an insignificant event in the trajectory of growth and development in Provo.
Thank you.
Are you suggesting that maybe this should be denied because we're mad at them for saying no? Or I'm just waiting, like, so what do we do with that? What do we do with our thoughts on this?
I'll jump in if you don't mind, Dave. But if this same development was proposed like this year in this housing market, we would have this room full of people begging that it gets approved so they can buy a home in one of these cottage areas.
Or if this type of housing was proposed in neighborhoods where 4- and 5-story apartment buildings are being built, the neighbors would be ecstatic about this happening. So to answer your question, Lisa, I'm going to vote my conscience, and I think that's what we're here to do, and just let it play out however it does.
Madam Chair, may I say a comment? And I forgot to mention this, and I apologize. This does align with the Southwest Future Land Use Map. It does show this area as a park for the linear portion and the Provo City portion.
Yeah, we missed our opportunity, but I just wanted to have that on record we say we want something, but we don't actually provide a place for it to happen. And so we're going to be banging our heads against the wall every time the mixed housing types gets raised because nobody really wants it next to them, which is sad. Yeah.
Okay.
I also,
yeah,
okay. So I also want to warn the neighborhood that just because it's zoned as a park doesn't mean you're going to get it in your lifetime, because I happen to live by one of those, and good luck. Your grandkids might enjoy the park.
Yeah. Okay. So do we have someone ready to make a motion? I know Commissioner Jensen will do that, but you can't rely on her to do all of them forever.
I can make a motion. I'm kind of torn on this one, but that doesn't seem to make any sense to send it back to some dead end. In my mind, it's not going to go anywhere. It seems like otherwise. So I move that we
recommend approval.
sorry, thank you. We recommend approval for the request of a zone map amendment for 6.3 acres of property from the R18 zone to the PF and OSPR zones located approximately at 1265 South, 500 West.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Commissioner Knudsen is second. Any discussion on the motion? All right, seeing none, we'll go to voting. Commissioner Miller.
Aye.
Commissioner Henry.
Still undecided. I'm going to vote nay.
Commissioner Gonzalez.
Aye.
Commissioner Anderson.
Nay.
Commissioner Jensen.
Aye.
Commissioner Knudsen.
Aye.
Commissioner Kendall. And I will also vote aye. So that is 5 aye and 2 nay, 2 against. Thank you. Do we have any other items of business for the commissioners? All right. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So made.
Could you state that as a formal motion, please, Mr. Anderson?
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Something.